Hello everybody, and welcome to a very special video look back on The Sims 2. Now, for those of you who don't know, or weren't around at the time, which I can't imagine is that many of you, but I had a long-running Sims 2 series that began 8 years ago on this date, July 31st, 2009. Now, back then, I was a brand new Let's Player. I had only done one Let's Play before this. It was the Civilization 3, and I had 64 subscribers. I decided that the next thing I would do would be to do The Sims 2, because at the time not that many people had done Sims content. There were a few, like Sims 2 machinima videos, but there wasn't a full-fledged Let's Play out there that I could really find. And my whole idea at the time was I wanted to do things that I didn't see anyone else doing. And The Sims was a game I always enjoyed, whether it be the first game or the second one, so I decided to start that Let's Play. Keep in mind, I was using an old Dell. Do I have it? Do I have that computer? Oh, yeah. I'm going to show you guys. I was using this old Dell from like the early 2000s to create the Let's Play. As you can see, it's very old. It's missing the spacebar now, but at the time it still worked. But yeah, this computer only had 40 gigabytes of hard drive space. It had limited RAM, and by and large, with a very limited machine, which comes across in the very choppy look to what you see here. But, I still think, after all these years, that the Sims 2 content that I made between 2009 and 2011 on that crappy old laptop was my finest work. It's hard to say exactly why, but definitely the people in the audience tend to agree with that. Those people who enjoy The Sims and watch me specifically for that, they always have been the biggest portion of my fan base, and I don't think I did enough back in the old days to really show everyone how much I appreciated all the viewership and all the support. But I'm doing this little tribute as a tribute for that. Now, the question is, what was this Let's Play and what did it become as time went on? Well, at first, Mike and Laura, the patriarch and matriarch of the family, were merely the sort of the vehicle used to show the game, basically. They just happened to be two people I created without much thought, that through them I was going to show off this game, just like I had shown off Civ 3 by playing as India, and I really didn't expect to get too attached to them. But as it turns out, I became very much attached to them, and so did the audience. Not just to Mike and Laura, but of course to Lucy, Amanda, and Sue as well. It was a lot of fun watching them grow up, and I'm experiencing that again with the new family I'm doing on The Sims 3 with Adelaide, Olivia, Trevor, and William, the children of the Wilson family. Now, these guys, once I got to the end of the Let's Play, and the original goal was to go until the oldest child was a adult, to basically do one full generation, to come back full circle to where the first child born was the age of the parents when I started. So I achieved that when Lucy and Amanda became adults in episode 82, but I didn't want to stop. So I decided to begin 2 new series, which became The Lincolns, the story of those who remained in this house, and um, Lucy and Puck, following the journey of newly married Lucy and Puck Summer Dream and their children, James and Allie. As time went on, I decided to split off Amanda into her own series, which was called Come On Amanda, which was an awesome name that was a viewer suggestion originally. So that was the most interesting game because Amanda, as we know, was the romance sim, and she ended up in a whole bunch of precarious situations, let's just say, with all her various lovers, and she ended up having 2 children from 2 of her lovers, and it was very interesting. She had the 2 boys, so you gotta love it, or I gotta love it anyway. I liked it a lot. So Amanda branched off and did her own thing. She was at Bruce's mansion for a while, then she was at her own house, and then she finally got in with Norm. And that was quite the Brady Bunch situation on a smaller scale, because it was Amanda, her one child with Norm, her one child with another father, Norm and his other child, Gary, from a previous unknown woman. So I had a lot of fun with that. And of course, finally, when Mike and Laura both died of old age, The Lincolns as a series was replaced by Sue's World, which starred, of course, the youngest daughter, Sue, and her wife. She was lesbian, if you recall, her wife, Edith, and their adopted daughter, Amaya, who was shaping up to be a really interesting character, and it's kind of too bad we never really got that far into them. But a lot of that fun stuff was happening, and I really feel that sort of the craftsmanship of the episodes grew over time, especially as I got to 2011 and I had my new computer, and I was able to make a lot more smoother videos. I was still using Windows Movie Maker, and it still sucked. It still crashed all the time, and it was a big pain in the ass to make the episodes, and too many times I succumbed to my laziness and didn't make them when I should have, and the series sort of faltered throughout the end of the year and into 2012. But I think that around that time was some of the best work I've done, not just with The Sims, but in total in my time as Bone Canoe 86. So I'm still very proud to this day of all that. Now, I was thinking that I might go through and talk about each of the family members that were still alive and still relevant when I sort of tapered off the series, and sort of tell you where I was planning to go with them, because believe it or not, I had some storylines worked out for some time. So, for a very long time, I kept those all secret. You know, I kept them all under wraps because I didn't know where the whether or not I would actually be continuing these series. Turned out I didn't, but I always wanted to keep the possibility of keeping that series going. So basically, I kept that secret, but now, let's be honest, it's been 5 years or more since my last Sims 2 episode. I think, needless to say, none of these series are going to be continued, you know, at least in anything approaching the way that I was doing them at the time. So I don't think there's too much harm in telling you what was happening. So we're going to go show to show, and we're going to start with Lucy and Puck. Lucy, of course, was moving up in her political career, whereas Puck lost his job and was cheating on her with Hermia, who, if you remember, was sort of the default lover he was given in The Sims 2. I thought that was a nice touch to bring it all back around. So, what was going to happen, and I think that most people saw this coming, was that Lucy and Puck were going to divorce. So, yes, eventually Lucy was going to find out, and the way she was going to find out was that her oldest son, James, was going to come home one day, catch Puck and Hermia, and Puck would try to promise, or make James promise not to tell, but James would tell, and that would lead to a big blow-up, and that would lead to the family breaking up. Very sad, but not entirely unrealistic. So, what would happen is that James and Allie would stay living with Lucy and go over to Puck's house on the weekend. So, that would be the plan, and I had a lot of ideas for James as his teenage years continued. He was going to become, well, you remember he had these two girls that he was interested in, and to be honest, I don't remember their names off the top of my head. You know, I'm doing this off the cuff, this whole presentation, without any real research or preparation, but the one girl was sort of like a punk, like she was like a radical, you know, she was a troublemaker, all around bad influence, you know. Cool and exciting kind of lover when you're a young man and you think that a crazy girl is who you want to be with, but you're not old enough to know that that's absolutely not what you want. Any young guys out there listening to me, no way. You would rather be alone than with a crazy woman. Trust me. And I'm sure it goes the other way for women and crazy men. But, you know, I know the one more than the other. So, but the other girl was a very sweet and nice girl who always treated James well, but maybe wasn't as exciting, you know, So I was going to give James what they call this a Betty and Veronica situation based on the Archie comics, where, you know, you have the more exotic wild girl and then you have the calm, tame, sweet girl. So what was going to happen was James was first going to date the crazy girl, and he was going to go through a total emo phase. I was planning on dyeing his hair black, having him have like emo clothes. He was going to go the full way, and he was going to start sort of acting out, you know, the stress of the divorce and all that. And eventually what he was going to do at the end of one episode, he would literally run away. And everybody would be like, oh no, what happened to James? But it would not be until the next episode of Sue's World that you would actually find out what happened to James, because he was going to end up at his Aunt Sue's house and ask if he could stay there. You know, get away from his mom, get away from his dad, just be there for a while, and everything would be okay. So that was going to go on for a while, but James was eventually going to get over his emo period, and he was going to stop being, you know, this girl was going to treat him so bad that he would eventually get fed up and leave her and be with the sweet girl. And you would think that's the end of the story, but it wasn't going to be the end of the story, because even though he's with her, you know, being the young and foolish guy that he still is so much more attracted to the bitch. And my plan was to infuriate the audience, because when James became an adult, when he would have become an adult, he was going to pick the mean girl over the nice girl. Yes, and there was going to be a spin-off series starring James and his new wife, and she was going to be awful. They were going to have one kid together, and then she was going to leave him. Just disappears, leaving the kid with him, going away. And from there, James was going to try to basically grow up, realize that he needs to sort of take responsibility and have good judgment and all that kind of stuff. And he was either going to court the nice girl once again, or there was going to be an entirely new girl. I hadn't decided. And that's about as far as I went with James's story, but that was already quite a bit in the future. In terms of Allie, who in this video bit is a toddler, she was going to grow up to be really close to her mom. Now, remember that everyone in Generation 1 and 2 had one of the 5 aspirations. You know, Mike was family, Laura was science, or knowledge, I guess. Lucy was popularity, Amanda was romance, and Sue was finance, was success, you know, was money. So I was going to repeat that in the 3rd generation with everybody getting one of those 5 traits once again, and the person to receive the family trait was going to be Allie. And my goal for Allie was she was going to be very close to her mom because James is going off and doing all his weird stuff, and Lucy was going to dive full on into her career. I wanted her to go all the way up and become the mayor of the town because I thought that would be nice. But Allie, very close to her mom, and when she grows up, and keep in mind, Lucy was never going to marry again. That was my plan. She was just going to dedicate herself to her career, and never again was she going to date. But eventually, once Allie grew up, I wanted to get her a nice, steady, strong husband. Lucy was going to move in with them, and Allie and her husband were going to end up having 5 kids. That's right. I planned on giving Allie a very big family. So that would have filled up all 8 spots in that family had that show gone on. So that was about the extent of everything I thought of for the Lucy and Puck side of things. Now we're going to move on to Come On, Amanda. So, as we know, Amanda and Norm were together. They weren't married, but they were together. The idea was they had sort of an understanding. Neither of them were monogamous, and they knew that each of them would have all these side people. They were swingers, basically. It's not a lifestyle I strictly approve of, but at the time, I was a little bit more loose with these kind of things, so I was kind of, you know, and also it was just fun. You know, it was just fun and silly and all that stuff. And so Norm had his older son Gary by a mysterious woman that we never meet. He had this son right here with Amanda that he just found out about here in this video clip. Then he had, then Amanda brought the other son in there, and I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, but I am. So, I don't know. We're just going to call him Al for now. I'm really sorry, buddy. I forget your name. But, and then we had the youngest son. So what was going to happen was basically Amanda and Gary were going to stay together and be, ironically, the most stable couple because they both did not expect anything from one another other than for them to do what they've always been doing, you know? But when Gary grew up, he was going to go away somewhere. He was never really a main character in the story. But when our buddy Al became a teenager, that's when things were going to get interesting. And so Al's story is the most important story of them all. Because I, believe it or not, was going to try to recreate Scarface with Al. I kid you not. This kid was about to undertake a life of crime. Very small time crime at first, but I had a really powerful arc going for him, which I'm about to outline for you now. Well, first of all, he was going to get just a job doing little criminal things. But then he was going to meet the local crime boss, who I forget what his name is, but he was going to meet him, and they were going to get very close, and he was going to become very close with his wife, too. If this sounds familiar, yes, I am borrowing a bit from the plot of Scarface. But he gives Al a mission, and this mission is to get close to Bruce. Remember the man that Amanda lived with, who she thought was the father of her child before she knew it was Norm? So Al was going to get close to Bruce because he was the first father figure he ever really knew. But because the story was Bruce had prior organized crime connections, and he owed them money, and he was evading them. There was a dark side to Bruce that we didn't get to see up until that point in the series. So Al gets to know Bruce, and then, and I wasn't sure how I was going to edit this, but right before Bruce, or before Al becomes an adult, he was given the mission by the crime lord that he was to kill Bruce. He had enough. Bruce was going to die. So Al is faced with a tough moral dilemma, but he chooses evil. That's right. He chooses to murder the first man who ever showed him any kind of fatherly affection. And from there, he would become an adult, and Al would very quickly rise. Oh, his name's George. See that? See that up there? George. I'm sorry. Just replace every Al with George. But okay, George was going to become a huge success. He was going to have a giant mansion that was of equal splendor and grandeur to the Scarface mansion. And on the way, he was going to betray his boss, steal his wife away, and it was basically MILF status to him because she's a bit older, but still very attractive. Her name was Heidi. I remember that distinctly. But he was going to steal her away and become the new crime boss in the town. And remember, Amanda is a cop. So, a very tense situation for this family here. But Lucy would sort of willingly look away, like not knowing and not really wanting to know. Eventually, though, much later on, probably by this point, Amanda would be elderly. She and Norm would finally, after so long, have a falling out. And maybe even Norm would die of natural causes or something. Who knows? But by that point, Norm would be... or Amanda would not have anywhere to go, and she would move in, basically, with her son, with George. Now, George would basically almost keep her a prisoner there, just to, protect her, that whole kind of thing. But eventually, what would happen is that, just like Scarface, everything that he would do would catch up with him, and one day we would see that the goons, the local organized crime goons, would come in and kill George. George would never be able to get that only about halfway into his adult span. And Amanda, broken up at her son's death, would move in with Sue and Edith in the Lincoln Mansion, the place where she grew up, and spend the rest of her days there, a very sorrowful woman. As for Amanda's other son, Tom, well, since George wasn't going to be continuing the family in any way, Tom was going to be the more or less normal heir to that portion of the family, and he was going to continue on with his own family line. Now, I think that Tom was meant to be... he was meant to be the romance sim of the next generation because basically every other slot was taken. George was fortune. I think James was knowledge. And Allie was family. And I think Amaya might have been popularity, or it might have been Amaya was knowledge and James was popularity. I don't really remember anymore, to be completely honest with you. But Tom would have been the one to carry on a relatively normal life and carry on that portion of the family. So that about wraps it up for the Come On Amanda segment. And so we're going to round it out by talking about Sue's World. Yeah, you all remember Sue's World, right? Oh, oops. Well, what ended up happening with Sue's World is, of course, being so much younger, her show was in the very early stages, and basically her and Edith were sort of getting settled into being the new masters of the Lincoln Manor, and with Amaya, getting to know her. Now, being a much younger series, I had a lot less planned for it, but I did have some plans. So I'm going to spell some of them out for you now. Sue and Edith would have, at some point in the near future, a relationship crisis. Now, I know you're probably thinking like, oh, you're being all soap opera-y, everyone's breaking up, but no, Sue and Edith were going to stay together forever. They were going to be a rock-solid couple. But I'm going to tell you what exactly was the plan with Sue. Now, remember, you might not remember this because it's a very small detail, but Sue was actually good friends with Bruce. Remember Bruce? Lived with Amanda Amanda lived with him for a number of years, thought he was the father of the child, all that stuff. Bruce was going to... Bruce and Sue, who saw eye to eye on a lot of things, like a lot of fortune and things, were going to become very close friends. They already were very close friends. Sue not really knowing too much about his criminal background, his organized crime background. But one night, Sue went over to his house to talk about business, and they had a few drinks. Now, Sue, of course, is a lesbian, so normally she's not going to go for a guy. But she's pretty drunk. Bruce is her very close friend, and she's always wondered, all this time, just what it was like to be with a guy, To do it the hetero way, I guess. Well, in the hot tub that night, things get a little heated. So, Sue, a few episodes later, finds herself pregnant with Bruce's child. That's right. Bruce, who was never a father to Amanda's son, finds himself a father to her younger sister Sue's son or daughter. We didn't know yet, obviously. But that would have tied into the whole story with George and all that, because now there is even more family connection, and Sue now has a connection to George and all that stuff that's going on with Bruce over on Come On Amanda, and eventually George's own spinoff, which would have happened as soon as he became an adult. Meanwhile, Sue would be interacting with James from Lucy and Puck, because remember, he was going to come live with them for a while. But all this is happening. Sue is pregnant, going to have a child, and at first Edith is very hurt and betrayed. How could you do this to me? All that kind of stuff. But as time went on, Edith was going to forgive Sue. They were all going to move on from it, and the relationship would be solid, and they would be together until the end of both of their natural lives, which would have been way, way, like dozens, hundreds of episodes in the future. So that was the plan. And there would have been another whole storyline with Amaya and the much younger biological daughter of Sue, because Amaya was there first. She was adopted. This younger child was an accident, and but this child carries the Lincoln blood in his or her veins, whereas Amaya doesn't. But Amaya is still very affectionate and kind towards this child. But there is that friction, there is that uncomfortableness, and that was going to be sort of the root of Amaya's story going forward. And I was planning on having that bloom into something more exciting and more interesting. But that's about as far as I got with that. Sue and Edith were meant to be together forever, basically. So they have a happy ending. Lucy has kind of a bittersweet ending because her marriage breaks up, but she would have become mayor of the town, and she would have found solace in her nice extended family and all her grandkids. So she would have at least had that. Amanda, poor Amanda, would have to outlive her own son and would be spending her last days in the Lincoln Mansion, not really interacting with everyone. But like we said, Sue would have a very happy life, And eventually, the grandkids, the third generation, would be the ones to take over the mantle. Like I said, George and his very temporary story, but then James, Allie, Tom, and Amaya would be the four to carry things on into the future. Of course, by this point, things were becoming really cumbersome and everything, and this story was getting very involved, but it was a lot of fun, and it would have been awesome to do this, but unfortunately, I just never had the discipline or the work ethic to really buckle down and say, okay, I'm going to have an episode a week, or even 2 episodes a week. I'm going to do it. It's going to be great. I just never could do it, so it never happened, and that is all the information that you're going to get for that. So that is the story of how everything was going to go in the future had I continued. And keep in mind, this all started from just me wanting to show off a family that I created as a vehicle to show you this game in Let's Play format. This all started with a very simple Mike and Laura Lincoln, who happened to have 3 children, and it just grew and grew and grew from there. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is The Sims 2, my Sims 2 stuff. And it lasted not even 3 full years, really, from the first ever episode to the last one, but the impact has been long felt. And now I'm starting anew with The Sims 3. Will I ever turn it into something as intense and involved as this? It's unlikely, but who knows. We have a new family, the Wilsons, with their 4 children, as I've said, well as Tom and Violet Wilson, and their children, Adeline, Olivia, Trevor, and William. All with different personalities, all shaping up to be very different people. So it's happening again, and if you haven't checked out my new series, I really recommend you do so. I don't know if it's as good as the original Sims 2. Well, in terms of video quality, it's much better, obviously. But in other respects, well, that's really up for you to decide. But I will leave you with this one last note. There is something very subtle linking the Wilsons back to the Lincolns. There is a connection in there, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's very hard to find. But on that teaser, I want to say thank you for watching this Sims 2 retrospective from 8 years later. I want to thank all of you who watched the original Sims 2 material, whether it was back in 09 through 11, whether it was more recently. I want to thank everyone who has stuck with me through all these years, or anyone who's come back and rediscovered my videos and rediscovered what I do. I genuinely do believe that making Bone Canoe 86 was probably the best thing that I've done in my entire adult life so far. It was the only thing that I've ever done, really, without anyone telling me I should, without anyone recommending it to me. I didn't ask anyone if I should, I didn't ask anyone if it was a good idea. I just went ahead and made Bone Canoe 86, and I think at the very pinnacle of Bone Canoe 86 stands my Sims 2 material. So I want to thank you very deeply from the bottom of my heart for giving me the kind of satisfaction of having reached an audience and having entertained and inspired and affected so many people through my Sims 2 material. It's meant a lot to me, and I don't plan to stop making videos anytime soon. Every time that I thought about stopping making videos, I thought about everything that had gone on before and everything that I had built up to, and I refused to throw it away. So, once again, thank you. And I will see all you guys later for more Sims content. Civilization, maybe City Skylines, who knows, maybe something else, I don't know. I'm willing to listen to anything you want to say. But that's it for me. This is going to be Bone Canoe 86 signing out. I'll see you guys later.